So greetings and hello everybody. Hi, this is Lawrence and I'm the Blue-Eyed Emperor. We're here to do an interview with the band Famous, with Xander and his lovely wife Norell. You two, big hellos from outside and everybody. We've had a chance to kind of circulate your website around, and we've seen your wife on Maxim magazine, and I actually casted a couple of votes. so yeah, absolutely, Norell. Bravo for that. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get our interview started. So why don't you guys do me a favor? Why don't you each give me a quick introduction about yourselves and how you met, the dynamics of that, and kind of take us through a walk in a day of Xander and Norell.
Okay, well, it was just a kind of a regular August afternoon, I suppose, in Minnesota, where I was going to school at the time for communications at the University of Minnesota. And one of my girlfriends, who was pretty avid in the modeling scene, different photo shoots and whatnot, had called me up blue on this particular August afternoon and said, "How would you like to be a body paint model with me tonight?" And I was like, well, let me think about it. I didn't have an answer right away, but I ended up calling her back and saying, hey, that sounds like an interesting experience, to say the least. So I was in. And so I like to kind of joke that I kind of crashed his party because he had like a roster of models that he worked with, and I maybe made a couple girls unhappy that night. I do apologize. I didn't mean to like take their spot if that's anything that occurred, because there were a lot of girls that wanted to be painted that night, so I feel very lucky that I got to be one of them. But it was very special, yeah. So I was one of his body paint models, as a matter of fact.
That's how I initially met. Yep.
Initially.
Later on, I think I had a stone around my neck, so I mean I'm wearing silver right now, but I always have worn like stones, especially back then, a lot more so than now, because I feel like I can have stones around me.
Oh yeah.
Kind of, and feel that energy. But I would wear them oftentimes because I wouldn't really have, a steady place all the time. So actually, I had two stones that I picked up in Texas, and she kind of pointed one and was like, oh, I like the labradorite or whatever that.
No, it was a lapis lazuli, actually.
Oh yeah, I love those. Favorite beads, man.
Yes, exactly.
What?
So there was kind of like a common affinity towards that stone. I thought I was wearing azurite, a different stone, and there was like
He almost had me convinced. Too.
Yeah.
Right.
He was like, no, it's azurite. It's the lapis.
That's a lapis.
Yeah.
It's just it's such a great.
It's such a good stone.
It's such a great. It has a good energy, but also the colors are very very magical. When you look at it, it has flecks of silver and deep blue and kind of swirls of. So you can kind of almost see the energy in the stone itself, because the stone is energy. So you have that, and it's just very powerful. And so I always would keep it. So we actually kind of parted ways the night we met, and we didn't really talk to each other for a while. I think we talked maybe on text or something, or MySpace or
Messenger, MySpace, Facebook.
Facebook didn't really exist. It wasn't as big as it is now, and I'm not on Facebook anymore. I think Norell has an account and everything. But we had just started to mutually find a common love for like art and like music, and just like very.
I was really a fan of his paintings, obviously.
Yeah, really interested in like spiritual things too. So that's like a big topic, I think, within arts, and like I think the entertainment industry really covers that as well. Like, you don't really have a specific theology when you go see a movie, like your expectations. Like maybe it's a scary movie and it's like thrills, or maybe it's like an uplifting drama movie with like love. But I do feel like that is even kind of a spiritual experience. So like when you get into a topic with an individual about something spiritual with the intent of a spiritual discussion, I think that's when you can really reach kind of a deeper understanding for yourself and also another person. So we really started to kind of explore that. And relatively early on, I felt really comfortable talking about those things with her. And sometimes we live in a society where we study like history, or we study like the arts, and everybody knows like the top singer, the top singer, Lizzo, and like, the top, everybody's just they're on it. They know the trends. But when it comes to like a spiritual thing, it's very, I don't want to say uncharted, because there's churches, there's lodges, there's cults, there's all these different things that you can explore. But even on a very human level of just like look at the person next to you and say hello, and be conscious when you're
When you're doing it.
attention to that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that. So were you always into art, Xander, from a young age? How did you get started into art? Was it music before art or art before music?
Music was a big part of my life. I studied like Suzuki method of like violin, to a degree, and that was like really influential. The violin's like a really weird instrument because you're like holding it with your neck and you're using your arm and you're using your fingers. It's just a very awkward thing. And so to go through that process, I think definitely gave me something spiritual, something different and something that I actually wanted to try to understand and see its depth. I was in a band, I don't remember the name. It was just like we were like doing shows in barns and stuff. But it was like very, it was very just to make music. It wasn't like we weren't concerned with like, let's put these T-shirts on and like look this way and like make this sound. It was just like we were getting to a barn, not concerned about like this. And then we did a few shows, but ultimately like paintings and color, I've always felt more comfortable. And just like being able to explore a new concept and new, really abstract territory. I feel like with writing, people are like, "What's your point? What's your depth?" Like with a painting or with an art form, there's a lot more territory that you can kind of leave open-ended, and so people can kind of interpret their own truth or their own understanding from that. So that creates a very exhilaration for me to have that. So like when you look at this, like I don't want to tell you like there's a waterfall and it's falling down and there's all these things coming out of it, because that could influence you. You might suddenly see a waterfall and then you're like, oh, I see it. So it's like I like listening to what other people see in my art and what other people hear in our music. So art has been a fantastic journey, but I mean, she really led me to music to create it more and to really zone in on it and to discover new art through the music. So that was kind of something really that grabbed me. So I was, her passion for singing, using her voice. So a lot of times, in music and in art, we lose the fact that like our voice is an instrument. And so when someone uses their voice as instrumentation, there's something really unique with that, because I need paints expire, instruments, all these different things. But the voice is something that you carry inside of you, and it's something that you embody. So that's that was just really special to see in Norell and
you know what for me, Xander and Norell, the fact that I'm involved with a lot of spirituality myself and a lot of interaction with people that have had some really horrible things happen to them in their lives, and then to see you two, I mean, to hear Xander even write his emails, you know that Norell is your muse, right? You just know that. I mean, that love and that passion that in his writing for you, and the way that he supports you and the way that you support him, it just rings and echoes the true embodiment of love and life the way I see that, right? You know what the thing is that you can't have that 24 hours a day, and I understand that, right? But I think in the way that you perform together, the way that you create things together, that whole gel for me just says wow. And that's why I was compelled to do this interview, right? Because of that love. Listen, I love your music. That artwork in the background is just driving me crazy. I gotta have a piece like that, right? I mean, yeah, I don't know what it's talking to me. I'm not sure what exactly yet, but it's talking to me. But so talk to me a little bit about that. So when you got together and you guys got married, did you say, let me follow you, Xander, down the musical path? Did you guys say, hey, collectively together, let's go with Norell, she's a singer? How did you guys come to the conclusion, let's do a band together?
Well, I think like initially we've answered that in other interviews, so I want to kind of bring a new perspective to that question.
Sure.
I felt very strongly that after the initial formation of getting together with friends and making spontaneous music, it was really something that it gave me something that nothing else could give me, and I think nothing else gives me that yet, or hasn't. It really has allowed me to tap into working with vibrations and an understanding that rhythm and like how our heartbeat has a rhythm and like there's all these like numeric properties within our bodies.
Oh yeah.
Within music as well. And so this is something that Norell was looking at, I think, as well. So we were both looking at it as this kind of really special, sacred thing. Like, you know, her being a singer with choir and singing and doing little, you know, doing videos here and doing videos there and like at like little spots on TV in Minnesota, stuff like that, commercials, you know. And then for me, it was more like art, and music wasn't really anything other than just like picking up a violin, you know, plugging it into an amp, like maybe having electric. I don't people are like, wow, an electric violin. Whatever, it's stupid. I don't really care, you know. That was as far as music was for me. So I was like very, you know, kind of like. But then when I had her there with her perspectives and passion of kind of like a yearning to like, hey, look at this unexplored territory, look at something new that we could discover together. Then I was able to. I was more hooked. I was more like fascinated by it. Like, well, let's see what we can do. And like, okay, so if you sing like this, you can layer your voice, and just like really understanding ways to craft art. I don't want to say more commercially, but now there's like album artwork that we obviously have to consider. Or like she's in the Maxim contest, so like there's collaborations with that. Many of the photos I've taken. So it's like it's really kind of looking at, you know, that kind of thing. So like, you know, when we just put out our music video today, which we're very, you know, excited to finally have that project done.
Yay!
You know, it's something that I think people can connect to, and so like when we looked at that, you know, as a band of like we can, you know, put this stuff together and discover ourselves, and maybe someone will listen to it, maybe not, you know, like we don't know, and we didn't really make it for people to listen to all the time. Like clearly it's like some of the recordings I'm like, oh yeah, sorry, but I'm like, we just made it though. We weren't trying to tinker with it and make it into like this really polished thing. Like that's very you know, so our first album has been very unconventional. It's in an app, you know, it's kind of hard to get to. It's like this weird format. The songs are individual. It's like a piece of art. You know, I always tell people it's a digital musical art interface type thing. And it's nuts. But you know, with the second album, we're gonna make it more commercially available. So it'll like the full complete album, not just Emotional Scatter, but the rest of the music as well. Mm-hmm. And we're just really looking forward to just new discoveries with music, because I think there's a lot that can be, you know, put together very differently. And there's a lot of good music that's, you know, happening right now. And there's, you know, millions of singers that are out there covering other people's music, and they feel inspired to do that, so they should keep doing that. And there's other people that want to do their own music, and they should do that as well. So it's like everyone has their own specific way of kind of going through music. And like some people that we've talked to spend all their life within music, but as a producer. So they're in a studio, they have headphones on, they do very personal relationships with their musicians and singers, and they have, oh, do you like this beat? Do you like that? They love that, and that's what they do, and that's amazing. Yeah. You know, everyone has their own way of sort of reaching people, but again, back to the question of like, you know, how we decided to go forward. It was just kind of a new thing that we wanted to really try to see, like, if we could compile it in a way that could be reachable to some people. You know, like we certainly don't have all the answers by any means, but there's some simple things like happiness and like dance. And apparently, when you dance, you regress like aging and stuff like that. So there's like all these new studies that are telling you like it releases endorphins.
Wow.
And it's crazy. So there's all these little details in music that are, I feel like, still undiscovered.
Yeah, definitely a lot of healing properties. And for I mean, personally, like art and music has always been a really good just method to cope and heal and grow and just transcend through any obstacles. Like, I mean, most people would relate, you know, if they're having a bad day, they're like, you know, they're going to listen to something that's going to either put them in a better mood or help them vent those emotions in a healthy way, you know, a constructive way.
So Norell, so Norell, some questions for you. So, if Xander couldn't play a lick on a guitar or a violin, would you still have him in the band?
He's my body painter.
Right. I mean, he's so so artistically talented. If he couldn't play anything, I'd still have him standing in the background if he couldn't play an instrument.
Yeah. She could slap tambourine. Like,
I have to ask. I absolutely loved you, Norell and Xander, in that video that you did with where the couples, where Xander was finding these other women and making love to them, and you were in the background, and you were like this vision. What was the concept of that? I absolutely love that thing, and if that was a short film, a movie, I'd watch that.
Thank you. Oh my gosh. Well, that is a very special song. Promises are something. It's something very sacred, very special, and I think sometimes people can be too quick to make a promise and not honor that promise. And so it was kind of like a big part of it. And I have to give credit to Xander, because some of the things that I wanted to create with this music video, I was like, you're gonna be a monster, to a degree, to a certain demographic.
Well, it could be seen as a monster. Many women. I actually had a friend who, when she saw that video, because she knew that we were married, her first instinct, she commented, was like rage. She was so mad. She was like, "Oh my God, Xander, how could you do that to Norell?" And really mad.
You
And
dirty.
then later, she deleted her comment, and she was a little embarrassed, and she messaged me, and she was like, "Wow, you guys, you did it. You made me feel, She's like, "I get it." She's like, "I get it." She's like, "You guys did it," And so that was a victorious, that was a great feeling that someone felt that connection, where it's like, oh, that heartache, that betrayal, we've all been there in some way, shape, or form. There were so many concepts we talked about, waiting for someone to pick you up at the airport and them never showing up, getting stood up on a date, that sort of thing, just so many things. Right. And we just, one of the things that drives home is probably almost everybody has been cheated on at some point. There's a lot of relationships are very difficult for people to navigate.
Absolutely.
Communication isn't always going on, and that some people might be in a relationship and they think they're exclusive, but one plays by different rules than the other. And so we wanted to kind of show how that can have detrimental effects, right. And just kind of the consequences of making promises but not owning up to them. And so your words will go as far based on kind of your patterns, do you actually change? Do you actually have a track record of being true to your word, and that sort of thing? So that's what I feel. If you want to add to that.
Yeah, the only thing I would add is that we brought in elements of alcohol and elements of sex and elements of but none of those things and I just want to clarify, because all of our art collectively is we're not going to use something that isn't very as a part of us, I guess, if that makes sense. I'm not going to fly an airplane if I can't actually fly an airplane in a music video. So these are
wait, Xander, are you saying that if you could actually cheat?
We have to remember, I don't want to talk religion, but Jesus drank wine. Wine isn't necessarily a bad thing. It's not bad to drink. People can get drunk and celebrate life. I believe that there are positive experiences in that, as the same way that in a lot of pagan practices and beliefs, it's you respect the earth, and so smoking part of the earth can give you a new state of consciousness, because you're undertaking the consciousness of the collective whole of a specific plant. There's all kinds of Navajo teachings with that. So I just want to clarify for the record that none of those things are really bad to me, and in many cases, we are in an open relationship or an open marriage to a degree. So it's for us, it was kind of ironic, this is going to piss off people, but the irony is that there's still a level of openness between us, but the main theme of the underline of that video specifically was that if you don't have transparency with your partner or with honesty, that you can affect someone's life. And it's not even just on a relationship, but just promises in general. We wanted that to be as sort of a repetitive reminder to someone, remember your promises, if you're going to promise, because you could just say, I'll be back, but when you say, I promise, I'll be right back, you threw a promise in there, and that's a vow, so vows, and even casting spells or prayers or meditations, having vows and intentions, that's a very sacred thing, so we want to be careful of how that can affect our relationships to ourselves even. So.
You know what, guys, I actually love you even more as this interview progresses, because absolutely, I embody the same emotions, the same truth, right, for me. So any relationship can exist as long as there's absolute honesty across the board, right? It's when you start to deceive and start to create that undertow, that's when the spiritual connection starts to break down. That's where all the dissension takes place. So I agree with you.
You mentioned about people being treated like they're disposable. That's the worst feeling in the world, and that's essentially what you're doing when you're breaking your word, your commitment. You're giving word that you're saying you promise.
Yeah.
You're making them feel that they're disposable to you. They're not worthy of having that vow upheld.
Yeah, you guys. I mean, that video to me, I wasn't screaming, "Let me strangle Xander." I was screaming. I was screaming, "Wow, what a imagery, right, for the mind to just take in and realize that this is happening all around us." I would use that video 1,000 times as a tool to teach everybody. Listen, here's where the breakdown begins, and the honesty and the truth starts to come out of its cocoon, right? So, absolutely love that, you guys. Just wonderful. So, what is the genre that you would say your music is? Is it what? If you could paint that picture of what your genre is, what would it be?
You know what's funny is apparently one of the blips today, they called us trip hop. So I don't know if that's true or not, but I've always just thought of us more as an alternative band.
Wait, what was the word? Xander, I missed it. What was the word?
I think our last song is trip hop.
It's called trip hop?
Not every song we've done is trip hop, so I would say, I guess, alternative.
Right.
I have heard, I know a friend who was in the industry in another country, which was interesting to get his perspective, had said he had classified it as progressive rock, and that was from our debut album that he heard from our app, which had
our new song is called Trip Hop.
Our new song is
Is it really?
Been classified like trip hop. I think we did a Google search recently, and someone had submitted that we're down tempo, which maybe some of our music is. But I mean, on our debut album, we had everything from, well, it was all improvised again, so it's like it's very difficult to, we're not going in with a category in mind.
I guess some of our biggest influence. One of my biggest influences is probably like Massive Attack in terms of like a 2-person band that have featured other musicians, and they're British and they do a lot of crazy stuff. But they do a lot of synthesizer, but they also have a lot of actual instrumentation too. So like, classical, like if you can play a violin, a guitar is like it's like the fingering is very similar, but it's not exactly the same. So it's like there's certain elements of music that are very like tonation. Like if you're recording something is different than if you're performing something. You know what I mean? So and that's a big thing with doing like improvised music is you're improvising, so you're going with the whim. The tempo takes you this way, so you want to go this way. But when you have to, with our new material, we've definitely had a more trip hop vibe, which is a lot of like catchy, fun beats and just like underlying tones that we can sing to, and Norell raps a little, so it's fun.
Wait. I'm dying to hear this. I'm dying to hear this. So wait, so Norell raps now. I've never heard the word trip hop, so now I got to go Google something because I don't know what that means. But so oddly enough, though, does Norell's song come out of her voice first before you put the music to it, or is that reversed? How does that music originate?
I think it's probably happened both ways, but there has, for example, with our debut album, some of it was freestyle without any words written down at all. Namely, Climax comes to mind. That was completely freestyle. Right. It was just...
The new material has been definitely, I feel like, a lot more, like, she said kind of both, but like, for example, the process would be like, she might be writing something down, and I'll be like, oh, like, do you want to record something? Just asking her. And if she's like, no, it's something, but she's still kind of going with it, I might be like, all right, I'm just going to make some kind of beat or something on the side. So we do play off each other with that.
A little ping pong.
I feel like with the latest track, Emotional Scatter, that's mainly her lyrics. So like that came, like she had her lyrics. We wanted something kind of more like an anthem, like something that people could more, pump their fist to and just kind of have fun with. So I hope some people can at least have some fun with it. And like that's a lot of the energy that we want to exude is just fun. You know, I don't want people to
Enjoying life.
enjoying life and just like looking at it and spending every moment together. So that's why I was like, you know, some people saw Promises and they thought it was like a message of like not to drink, and I was like, no, I didn't.
Come on.
But, you know, and it's like, so I just want to clarify, you know, because that's the thing with making something ambiguous is if you ever actually like throw a dart in a specific direction, someone's going to say, you know, well, you know, the last song you did was like Laser Eyes and it's got guitar riffs, but this song's more like, you know, she's rapping. So then, you know, and I mean, we want to give people, you know, a sense of fun. I want people to, however they can, you know, get up and move around and move their body to and just, you know, have a sense of fun still. So.
And I think the greatest thing about your music and your videos is that you guys are having fun with it. And I absolutely never in my life thought all that negativity when I watched that video, Promises, right? I said, wow, now that's a message that's deep, right? And that people, and you have to feel that, right? You can't, on the surface, everybody wants to point their fingers at oh, this is bad, that's bad, this is bad. But once you really embody yourself and live that video, I think that's where the true essence of the energy and that takeaway message comes from. So, no, good work, you guys. So, talk to me a little bit about how you're supporting your wonderful wife, Norell, and the Maxim magazine thing. That was is that Xander doing more photography there too?
He actually did a lot of the photography that's in there. There are a few other photographers that we've worked with, and like some of the images have been shared on our Instagram, and we give them credit anytime we share them on our Instagram.
Yeah.
It wasn't really way to credit to everybody. So
I've always been really supportive of Norell's like body positivity fan. And like her. So I think like the biggest thing, especially like when you get married, is there's a lot of like, oh, you know, like don't look over here. Well, in society though, there's
he's
this
mine, lady. Don't look at him.
There's like this unspoken word of like ownership of people, you know, and so I've always told her like I want you to express yourself, like enjoy your youth, you know, like we're young now and we're beautiful now and we should enjoy it. We should express ourselves. So I've always supported her, you know, obviously me with a background in body painting, but also her modeling. You know, she said, you know, I'm running in this contest, you know, and I'm like, how can I help? You know, let's figure out what images we can add. A lot of the images were actually removed because if you show like any specific nudity, which I'm okay with, but apparently that site, it wasn't okay to bear whatever. So like, that's always.
The record, I only uploaded certain photos based on other photos I was seeing in the competition.
I mean, it's regardless.
No, I think it's very artsy, very classic, right? I don't think there was anything raunchy about any of the pictures. I was like, wow. I was wondering, my God, not only could Xander paint, Norell could act, could sing, is a model. I'm thinking to myself, wow, this is a hell of a power couple. So. What's Xander? Who's the Libra?
That's the thing. When I looked at her and when we met, you know, I was like, wow. You know, obviously, she was very beautiful, and you know, there's first impressions and all those things. But just like all these years later, she's still beautiful. So it's like I don't want to, you know, the body's a sacred thing. Like we need to look at it with more innocence, and at the same time, people need to feel more comfortable with their sexuality, where they can look at a naked person and be like, wow. They're sexy, and just feel okay. Like they shouldn't have to feel dirty about, you know. But she's married. I'm like, it's okay to look at a person and say you're sexy or you're beautiful. Like we live in a society where it's more normal to be like fuck you and this and that. Okay, I'm sorry, I shouldn't swear, but we live in a society where we're quick to insult but slow to compliment, and that's just not something that. And so sometimes women are now guarded about receiving compliments because everything is so sideways. And so I want to. At least if we're, you know, in any kind of public light to say, you know, this is a married woman running in a Maxim contest, you know, I support her nude modeling, I support her body paint modeling, I support, you know, her dreams of running a contest or, you know, putting out her music videos, whatever she's doing, I'm behind her supporting it. It's not because I'm telling her to do this. This is what she wants to do, so I'm just supportive of that. And I think other people need to be more comfortable, you know, supporting their loved ones. And that's a big part of it is just honesty, you know, like if someone's feeling, you know, if there are another couple out there and they're like, oh, but I feel jealous if I put on a bikini, you know, my guy's going to freak out, or like if I put on a Speedo, my boyfriend's going to get mad. I'm like, have those conversations and be like, hey, you're just really good looking, and I sometimes question, like, wow, you know, or just like talk, whatever you're feeling, talk about it, and you might come out on top. I mean, that's the thing, is we shouldn't be so scared to have those conversations about going on a date with another person. It doesn't always have to be sexual. You know, we've gone out on dates where it's like we're still coming back home. It's not always where you're driven just to go into the bedroom. Sometimes it's actually about having a conversation or developing a relationship with someone, or having a spiritual discovery, or like learning a new skill, or whatever it is you might not know yet until you have that openness. And that's something that we try to keep with each other, and also just remind each other, you know, that that's what we stand for, you know.
Right.
And you know what, guys, and this is one of the wonderful things, and I was applauding those comments while you were making the background, because my channel isn't a religious channel, it is a spiritual channel, right? And it's about love and light. Not love, I gotta get you in the bed is right, but just love in general as the concept, right, of accepting people, whether they're naked, unclothed, whether they believe in Buddhism or whatever the case may be, is to accept that energy and the value of that person for what that belief is, right? Because that's the true essence of who we should be. But we've lost that touch as a community, as a society. We don't care. If you walk down the street anymore, nobody looks up, everybody's looking down at the ground at the phone, nobody looks up and goes, hi, how are you? My name is Lawrence, or hi Xander, hi Norell.
Yeah.
We've lost that
Too
contact.
many trust issues. They just assume that everybody's their enemy. It's like you know, that could be your next best friend.